Live and direct, live and I take no jive.
Legalize it.
I mean, how much can a koala bear? Koala bear, koala bear. Koala bear. Barry pulls a joint out of his pocket. Bill says, "Great, Barry, a reefer."
Hi, welcome back. It's another episode of the Karma Koala podcast, and the koalas are back home, and they really are home because they're in northern New South Wales, well, sort of mid New South Wales. So there's as close as home as the koalas get these days in the conversation. With speaking to hemp farmer Tim Schmidt, who's actually based down in Tasmania most of the time, but as I say, he's up in New South Wales at the moment. He's also the volunteer president of the Australian Hemp Council, he worked self-employed at the Tasmanian Hemp Association, and he spends a lot of time talking to state and federal government. And a report has just come out about hemp in Australia that Tim's going to speak to us about. He's also tried to talk to people in Canberra, and I'm interested to know what that conversation was and whether he just gets people scratching their heads, or there's actually people who are actually interested in trying to grow the hemp sector in Australia, because all the conversation, of course, is about medical cannabis at the moment. And my thinking is less and less about that plant going into human bodies, and more about how the plant can benefit everything else on the planet in the world that we now live in. Tim, thank you very much for joining us on the Karma Koala podcast. Sorry for the rather long intro. Do you want to give us a little bit of background about, I mean, you come from a farming family, I presume, but what led you towards hemp and how long ago?
Yeah, thanks, Ron. The first thing is that I'm no longer involved with the Australian Hemp Council. Stepped down from that position, and Matt Lareba's taken on that role and doing a great job. And no longer with the Tasmanian Hemp Association.
Okay.
But
apologies.
Yeah, no, you're right. However, I have been working for quite a number of years on this Senate inquiry proposal. But as a farmer in Tasmania, I was looking for, we've got 800 odd acres there, and there's a bit of cropping, and we're running a lot of cattle.
Yeah.
But I was looking for some cropping rotations that would suit our country, which is wet during the winter. And I saw an article on a field day on the hemp industry in Tasmania, and that sort of got my interest going. And I found that the industrial hemp crop fitted beautifully in with our rotations. And of course, it's one of these things that the more you learn about, the more fascinating it is. And for me, I just can't help learning as much as I can about it because of the absolutely incredible opportunities it provides.
And when you initially were putting it in for rotation, were you just literally putting it in for rotation, or had you got a plan to do something with it, or would the Tasmanian government let you do something with it, is the other question.
Well, I have to say that through Phil Warner, who was the founder of Ecofibre, he did a lot of work in Tasmania, and there's the late Phil Reader, who was the founding president of the association, did an awful lot of work with the Tasmanian government, and got some really good legislation designed and implemented, which helped the growers. And at the time that I started growing it, I was growing it for the corporates as a seed for food crop, and that's my specialty area. And so it fitted in really well with the crop, with the farming, and of course part of that rotation is potatoes, hemp, and then grass seed. One of the ideas is that not just the productivity, the return per hectare for the seed, but also the regenerative factors.
Well, that was what I was going to ask you, because that's what a lot of people have worked out. Its best use is in a pecuniary fashion, because it's what follows next will earn you more. It's not actually the hemp itself sometimes, is it?
Just a side story to that, which I feel really strongly about, is that a well-known vegetable supplier for supermarkets wanted to implement hemp as a manure crop in Queensland. And so the process was simply to sow the crop, let it grow just a half a metre or whatever, and then plough it in. There's no flowers were going to form. It was a non-drug crop. And the government said, oh, it's not fit for purpose, so you can't get a license for that. And it just drives me nuts when that sort of thing happens, because it's so beneficial for everyone, yet the government, through ignorance and restrictions, just cause this sort of situation.
A quick first question before we go on to the report and the conversations you've been trying to have in Canberra. I get the sense that Tasmania and Western Australia are the two states that sort of understand the benefits of hemp more than other states in Australia. Would I be correct in that assumption?
At one time, that might have been the case. There was an agricultural minister in Western Australia who was incredibly supportive of the industry. And then with the change of minister, the complete opposite happened, and the support for Western Australia fell away. I would say that New South Wales is by and far in the lead in reform, in support of the industry. And only just recently, there were two fibre hub proposal businesses granted $10 million each in Western New South Wales to support development of the industry there. So that is the single biggest financial contribution by any government in Australia to the industry to date.
And in New South Wales, who is the new Minister for Agriculture, the person pushing that, or is it a government policy that we've missed a trick here?
Well, the interesting thing there, Sean, is that Jeremy Buckingham,
so Buckingham's been doing a lot of work on it, has he?
He was the main driver of this, and they do have a very good relationship with the agriculture minister there, who has come on board in support of the aspects of the industry. And so I would say that
so
was
it still needs an outsider, even though they're in the parliament, to push the message through to the minister and then the department.
Yeah. Oh, well, what happened was that they established a task force, of which I was on, in New South Wales, and that was a very comprehensive, developed process that really has pushed on the initiative or the inertia for the industry to gain government support in New South Wales. In contrast, Victoria, they also had a task force, but I think they were just more or less paying lip service to it, whereas the New South Wales government has put their money where their mouth is and really supported. And I'd have to credit Jeremy Buckingham as one of the main drivers for that.
And do you think that this push has bipartisan support? So inevitably, when Labour head out and the Liberals head back in, that they won't try and trash it?
Well, I've always said that that the industrial hemp ticks three boxes: the commercial box for the Liberals, the social box for the Labor, and the environmental box for the Greens.
And what about the Nationals? What are the Nationals? I mean, because it's on Nationals' land, and it benefits their people in a way if they can start learning and cropping this. So, are the Nationals interested, or are they just sitting on the sidelines?
Yeah, another thing I've always said, that ignorance is the biggest enemy of hemp. And I tried to reach out to the Nationals at one stage, but there wasn't much interest at that time. I'm sure that's changed, but I can tell you that in developing lobbying for this national inquiry, One Nation was very much in support of it. Jackie Lambie and the Liberals.
Okay, so let's talk about Canberra. You were down in Canberra. Who were you speaking to? What were you saying to them, and what were they saying to you?
I actually went to the hearing in Longford in Tasmania, but it was all look. It was a 6 year process, Sean, and the initial stages was sitting at my kitchen table with Jackie Lambie having a discussion as to how we could do something for the industry, and she made this suggestion, which I took on board. and over the years, I was garnering support from Peter Wish-Wilson, who is a really strong supporter of the industry and a great ally to hemp. So he and David Shoebridge from the Greens guaranteed 100% support. And
It's
One
interesting,
Nation.
isn't it? It's the names that keep popping up who are individual thinkers. So you've got Buckingham, Lambie, and Shoebridge, who are
Yeah.
names I'm fully familiar with in this area because they keep pushing the message about this particular plant, whether it's on the cannabis side or the hemp side, and they must feel as though they're banging their head against a wall every now and then.
The key strategy that I had for progressing it was to have a Liberal a Liberal member put the motion forward to the Senate, and I have to say that Richard Colbeck, once he learnt the background, he took it on really well, and he worked with Peter Wish-Wilson, and between the two of them, they gained the support in the Senate to put the motion through for the Senate inquiry. So my discussions were primarily with those people, but also I would garner opinions and ideas from right across the industry, key stakeholders in the industry to try and figure things out. And one of them, you'd be surprised maybe, one of the greatest and most reliable sources of information and ideas came from a Tasmanian bureaucrat. Now, the Tasmanian government, to try and help the industry develop, they had an individual, one of their bureaucrats, take on the task of understanding as well as possible the international and national implications of, say, the Singles Convention and how it all implicates right through the political spectrum in Australia. Now, this individual I relied heavily on to garner an understanding and a clarity, which brought me to be able to try and simplify the message and the goals so that they're much more achievable rather than having a complicated issue that people can't grasp. So that's sort of the way I developed an understanding to be able to try and drive the ideas and the outcomes that we're looking for. Which on receiving the report yesterday and looking at the recommendations, I could say that we've had a fair degree of success.
So, what are the recommendations?
Well, there's 14 of them, and I don't know if I need to read them all out.
Yeah, but yeah, just a basic overall understanding. So, look, a lot of my listeners are outside Australia, so they'll be interested to know, what these recommendations are, and especially as many listeners are in the US, and there's a huge issue about hemp in the US. Look, I've got a project where I'm putting together every piece of legislation and primary material on hemp and cannabis on the planet into one space so people can use it to research. So I've spent the last week going through every state in the US reading their legislation on hemp. And of course, most of their legislation, 90% of it is, well, not quite that high. Let's say 70% of it is about human consumption, and only the remaining 30% is about the industrial application of hemp. So I think it's really interesting to spread the story and dig in much more to the industrial hemp aspect and what different governments are beginning to understand how it can benefit their economies.
Okay, probably the best way to explain it is what our key goals were, because they pretty much reflect what's in the recommendation, although there's a certain amount of political speak that gives them outs for different things.
You've got to have wiggle room.
Yeah, they got lots of wriggle room there, but essentially what we were looking for was a legislated definition of hemp and have it removed from the National Poison Schedule. The definition that would apply for us is cannabis with less than 1% THC. What we're trying to do is make a really clear distinction between marijuana and hemp, and get it, so solid, such a solid differentiation because it's legislated. right? And then that makes it really clear. That sort of factor then influences through all the authorities that have to deal with it. The other goal we had was that for industrial hemp, for the Department of Agriculture to be the single oversight for industrial hemp production, and all those other bodies such as the Therapeutic Goods Administration, the APVMA, and FSANS, and the various regulatory bodies, and the Office of Drug Control. They deal with it when it's in a form that relates to them, not as an industrial commodity crop in the way that it should be treated. Another recommendation, so there was the legislation, extra support for research.
Yep.
And that's in there. And also government support in procurement, and that relates most particularly to building materials. There's a number of companies here that are very close to developing cheap housing made from hemp, and it just ticks so many boxes, as most of the listeners would know. Another key one was mostly the government can only do something about, is that the likes of Meta and Square and various financial institutions, social media institutions, the moment that they see hemp in the text or whatever, they just slam down on the industry. And it's just totally unwarranted. It should be made illegal, really. When you're conducting a completely legal operation and you want to do advertising, like someone with a washing powder wants to advertise it, the hemp industry, the industrial hemp industry, should have that same right. And that's something that's really important, that the government can and should, on behalf of the industry, say to the big boys, now, listen here, sort yourself out and let the industry grow.
And what about, as New South Wales is doing, what about open discussion about investment in terms of processing facilities? Because every time I have a conversation about hemp, wherever it is on the planet, that's where the big hole is. People, it's fairly easy for farmers to invest their own money and grow it, but then there's nowhere to process it in order to be able to turn it into A, B, C, or D.
Yeah, look, that's and I must admit that I haven't seen anything too clearly in that line. And as I said in my interview with Hemp Today, that confidence is the issue from an investor point of view. And if the government could underwrite a $50 million investment into a fibre hub, I mean, they don't have to pay for it. They just underwrite it, so bring other investment in. Well, but I think that will evolve, because really one of the key things about this inquiry was that it was to raise the profile of the industry and to get some people that count educated about how it, what can be. It's really important that the senators that were on the committee, and there's a whole range of political influences on there. They're our allies. They know now. Their eyes have been opened, and there was one of the senators that I was talking with, and he said, "Oh, I had no idea." Now they're our, dare I say it, disciples, who will carry the word forward into the broader parliament, and also help have the community become more aware. This is what we need, is an understanding, so that they can support the sensible policies that are required for the industry to go forward.
And what about the big end of the agriculture business? So those sort of big contract companies that own the land, and it seems to me that, as you say, there's a number of people like yourself around the country in different states, who have been doing the work for up to 20 years. But in terms of the massive ag companies, I don't hear much or know much about their views on industrial hemp growth. Are they in the conversation, or are they still to be persuaded to walk towards water?
I think there's one thing you can explain is the term "show me the money,"
Yeah, yeah.
because it needs to be a clearly profitable exercise. In saying that, they are on the periphery and they are watching. Don't you worry about that.
Well, I'm sure.
They're watching more
You
and
know,
more.
it's difficult to ever work out what those sorts of organizations are doing. So if you're in it and there's word of mouth, but then, public statements are few and far between. So it's always hard to
Few and
work
far
out how they're
between.
thinking.
Yeah, look, they all very coy about getting involved or letting people know that they're getting involved. They like to do it under the radar. But I can tell you that there is one significant corporate that is taking substantial measures, at least towards the concept of a fibre hub. I think that that's one of a couple of business ventures that once, well, hopefully they get up and running and show the success. And then look, as soon as
Well,
the
it's the same story. So as soon as one's in the playground, I always say, as soon as one or
yeah,
two are playing on the slide, the others all want to play on the slide, don't they?
exactly. And the other term is everyone can't wait to be second, first to be second.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and that's exactly the same as what you're saying is that once someone gets up there and shows that they're going to make a dollar out of it and make a success of it, then the floodgates will open. But there's so many factors that have got to, particularly in that fibre side, so many factors that have got to come together for it to successfully gel.
Further products down the road, just for general listeners. In Australia, you already have you know animal feed, hemp for human consumption. You're talking about fibers. Explain to us what the wide range of, and you've talked about building as well, and construction. How hemp, uh, as we know it at the moment, what other things can it create and produce and help us with? And also, I'm really interested specifically within the Australian environment and agriculture, how it helps repair land, as you sort of mentioned earlier, because that's a huge issue, and it's good to hear that New South Wales are thinking a lot more about hemp now because there's so much damaged land in New South Wales. Is hemp actually going to be a major part of the solution for that?
Look, I don't know that I'd call it a major part of the solution, but where it would be present, it would be part of a solution. An example is if the cotton areas, if the cotton regions take on hemp as a rotation in their cropping system, which is very highly practical and I hope very possible, then that really does help with breaking the cycles in the soil and helping with the hemp will be a regenerative crop to help support cotton production. And the same can happen in the sugarcane industry. I think it's 15% of the sugarcane crop is out of rotation each year, and that equates to about 60,000 hectares up in the Burdekin region, up in that way. So
And do they
it's
just
got to,
plow it straight back in, or do they actually harvest it?
no, I'm talking about harvesting it for a fibre hub
Okay.
situation. So both cotton and sugarcane have similar logistical requirements. And so there's a lot of systems and mechanisms in place already that would suit a hemp fibre hub to be set up in the region because they can duplicate or work in with the other crops. So as far as I was talking with Jan Slusky from Canada, who's a researcher, and he's done years of research on productivity following hemp crops, and that work is finished, and he's very close to publishing the work to show where, like, and this is what we're talking about is solid scientific evidence to back up all the fluff that it throws around. So it's really important to see that invitation, see that information, which would be, peer supported, to show that there is, in reality, great gains to be made with using hemp as a crop. Now, I do need to mention, you talk about feedstocks for animals. There's something, this is a watch this space spot, but the Meat and Livestock Authority, which has got a huge amount of support or funds and push, they've looked at, they did a study on biochar, and they used all sorts of different bases for biochar, and their conclusion was that the results were not too bad, but it's not really as comparable to asparagus or the seaweed. So there's a gentleman in northern New South Wales who's taken it upon himself to develop a hemp biochar, and he's worked with the Southern Cross University up at Lismore, and they've done some research there which is not yet published, but they've shown that they can make significant reductions in methane emissions and increase in weight gain using hemp biochar. So this is one of those areas where it'd be great if the government could provide extra support to develop that evidence to show what we already know.
Yeah, pump a bit more money into research institutes and the universities. With regard to this, I did have one question. Sorry, I jumped back and forth a bit in this conversation. 0.1% or 1%, sorry, is fantastic improvement on the standard 0.03%. What happens when that crop, due to a number of reasons, is over the 1%? Because most of the time that money and energy has to be, literally energy has to be spent destroying that crop. What's the discussion with regard to all crops that fail those tests? Because that seems to have been a huge problem up to this point, is, people grow stuff and then the climate or the soil or whatever puts it over that, and then it's suddenly hot hemp, even at a ridiculously low level.
Yeah, true.
How is it? Are the politicians smart enough to have that conversation yet?
Well, given that the states are the ones that administer the legislation, if you're in Queensland, you've got no hope.
Yeah.
However, in Tasmania, if you Google the ABC News and about hemp crop destroyed, you'll see a video of our paddock and myself riding a tractor over a hemp crop, knocking it down. The media thought I was going to put a match in it and make a beautiful big fire, but no, I just incorporated it back into the soil. It was 1.3, I think. Now, that was 5 years ago, I think, something like that. I believe that there would be a completely different attitude taken by the authorities on that, and there would certainly be some leeway, ministerial or secretariat discretion, to allow for that crop to be disposed of in a more
sensible
way.
manner.
Yeah, so certainly in Tasmania, and I'm sure in New South Wales, the political attitudes have shifted, and that's a great thing. But you've got places like Queensland and to a degree Western Australia that they've sort of gone back to the dark ages.
So, I mean, look, we're almost at an end. On that point, are you now feeling more positive about an Australian hemp industry that can support itself, thrive, and become even, dare I suggest, an export market that teaches the rest of the world that hemp is a positive thing, and not to confuse it with all the other issues going on at the moment with medical cannabis in Australia?
Yeah, you've just described a dream outcome, but I'd say that whatever happens, it's not going to happen quickly. And the unfortunate mistake some people make coming into the advocacy space, thinking it's all going to happen overnight, never does. But I believe that we've really got something to work with here. We've got a bunch of senators that have been enlightened, and now they're our advocates and allies. And there was another recommendation I forgot to mention, and that is establishment of a national task force to assist the government in
As long as we don't
redeveloping.
have a royal commission, please.
No, no, they wouldn't afford it. But the thing is that we've really got something to work with, and it's just fantastic that the Senate inquiry has had these outcomes that give us an opportunity way more. This is a big shift for Australia, and a huge opportunity. And if we can, as an industry, and with these senators, push these regulations, not let off the pressure, work through the media, and get at least the recommendations into Parliament at the very least, then it's just a fantastic move forward, and we can leapfrog the US and Europe and have an industry that's just way ahead, and we just got to keep that carrot in front of them to tell them that, look, this is what can be. Fingers crossed. We'll just keep working away at it.
No, well, that's the only thing to do in this space, as I well know, having I just bang on year in, year out, and
Yeah.
eventually people start listening. Tim, thank you very much for being on the Karma Koala podcast and giving us an insight into this report and a sense of hope about hemp in Australian agriculture. I don't want to say it, but it's almost sort of exciting, but we can't use words like that. So.
No, don't. Just hold on a minute.
Let's just we'll hold back on excitement and just say positive.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Tim,
no, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Live and direct, live and I take no jive.
Legalize it. So, I mean, how much can a koala bear? Koala bear, koala bear. Koala bear. Barry pulls a joint out of his pocket. Bill says, great, Barry, a reefer.